Being his stupid sidekick, I loved it. And she was such a jerk. I love jerks.
Really?
I wish I could excel at, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I'd like to do a few more jerks, yeah.
She is a Hollywood legend, bold, witty, and completely original. An actress who didn't just play roles, she created archetypes, from the neurotic, charming intellectualism of Annie Hall to the fierce, tragic strength of Kay Adams Corleone in The Godfather. Diane Keaton carved a space in cinema that was entirely her own. With an Oscar, countless accolades, and a career spanning over 5 decades, she secured her place as one of the most respected and beloved icons of the silver screen. Her style, a unique blend of menswear tailoring, bohemian flair, and undeniable elegance, became as iconic as her characters, inspiring generations to embrace their own individuality. But for all the bright lights and red carpets, for all the iconic films and unforgettable moments, there is another, quieter side to the story of Diane Keaton. It's a story she has fiercely protected, a narrative of love and family that unfolds not in the glare of the spotlight, but in the warm, ordinary glow of home. This is the story of her greatest role, one she never rehearsed for, one that demanded more of her than any director ever could: motherhood. And this is the story of the 2 children, Dexter and Duke, who became the undisputed center of her universe. So, whatever became of Diane Keaton's kids? In this deep dive, we look beyond the fame and the films to uncover the private world she built for her family, a world of grounded normalcy, fierce independence, and a legacy that has nothing to do with Hollywood and everything to do with heart. To understand the mother Diane Keaton became, we must first understand the woman she was. And that story begins long before the name Keaton was synonymous with fame. She was born Diane Hall on January 5, 1946, in Los Angeles, California, to a civil engineer and real estate broker father, Jack Hall, and a mother, Dorothy, who was a homemaker and an amateur photographer. Dorothy wasn't just a backdrop in her daughter's life. She was a former Mrs. Los Angeles pageant winner, and that image of her mother expressing herself on a stage, commanding attention and admiration, left a profound and lasting impression on a young Diane. It was her first glimpse of performance, of the delicate balance between public persona and private self, and it ignited a spark. She grew up in a modest, close-knit, and religious household with 3 siblings. Her upbringing was structured, filled with discipline and regular church attendance, a framework she would later say shaped her own strong sense of independence and moral compass. But she also watched her mother, Dorothy, quietly set aside her own creative passions and photographic eye to raise a family. We've hit 10,000 subscribers, and it's all thanks to you. But this is just the beginning. If you want more deep dives, insights, and discoveries, hit that subscribe button. Let's reach those 15,000 subscribers together. Your support means a lot. This silent sacrifice became a powerful, subconscious lesson for Diane, a poignant reminder of the choices women make and the parts of themselves they sometimes have to compartmentalize. This duality, this tension between creative expression and a structured private family life, would become a central, recurring theme in her own journey, informing both her career choices and her ultimate approach to parenting. In high school, Diane was already deeply drawn to the arts, finding her voice in choirs and losing herself in the transformative world of school plays. After a brief and unfulfilling stint at community college, she mustered the courage to make the bold move to New York City to chase her dream of acting. She supported herself through waitressing, auditioned relentlessly, and her big break came on Broadway in the original production of Hair. It was here she adopted the stage name Keaton, a tribute to her mother, Dorothy Keaton Hall, seamlessly and purposefully weaving her family legacy into her new professional identity. This was more than a stage name. It was a tether to her roots, a constant reminder of where she came from even as she soared to unimaginable heights. Her rise in Hollywood was meteoric, but it was entirely on her own terms. Her quirky confidence, her refusal to conform to typical starlet standards, and her unique, often androgynous style made her an instant standout. Her collaborations with Woody Allen, culminating in the Oscar-winning Annie Hall, didn't just make her a star, they made her a style icon and a voice for a generation of intelligent, complicated women. But through it all, the grounding of her childhood remained. She was shaped by her family's love, her mother's quiet strength, and a deeply ingrained desire to live life on her own terms. This independent streak extended to her personal life in a very public way. She had high-profile relationships with co-stars like Al Pacino and Warren Beatty, but she never married. Years later, she would reflect that she simply never found the right person, and, more importantly, she was unwilling to sacrifice her hard-won independence for the sake of convention. She had built a magnificent, celebrated life entirely by herself, but as she entered her 50s, a profound realization began to dawn. The spotlight, for all its warmth, couldn't heat an empty room. The applause, however thunderous, was fleeting. She began to feel a void that fame and professional acclaim could not fill. The mid-1990s found Diane Keaton at the pinnacle of her career. She had an Oscar, critical acclaim, and the kind of longevity in Hollywood that few actors ever achieve. Yet a new, more powerful yearning was taking root. "I spent so much of my life focused on work," she once admitted in a candid interview. "I didn't really think about starting a family." Then one day, it just hit me. Maybe it's time. But for Diane, this wasn't just a fleeting thought. She would later reveal the deeper truth. "The only thing I ever wanted was to be a mother. I always knew I would adopt." In 1996, at the age of 50, Diane made the life-altering decision to fulfill that dream, adopting a baby girl. She named her Dexter. The moment she held her daughter for the first time, she described a seismic shift in her entire being. "When I first held her, I thought, this is it. This is what I was meant to do," she recalled. The purpose she found wasn't in a script or a character. It was in the simple, overwhelming, and terrifyingly beautiful act of being a mother. 5 years later, in 2001, she completed her family, adopting a 1-year-old boy named Duke. The decision, she later said, completely redefined her world and her understanding of love. "Motherhood wasn't something I planned," Diane explained, clarifying that while the timing was unexpected, the desire was always there. "It was something I felt deeply once it happened. I didn't know I could love this way." As a single parent, she approached the role with the same dedication, research, and unique perspective she brought to her most challenging acting roles. "It was scary at first," she confessed with her characteristic honesty. "I wasn't sure I'd be any good at it. But then you realize you just do your best, and you love them. That's what matters." She consciously began to scale back her work, arranging her film schedule around school pickups, parent-teacher conferences, homework, and the simple daily routines of childhood. Her priority was no longer the next big role, but the next bedtime story, the next family dinner. She was determined to give Dexter and Duke the one thing her own fame made scarce: normalcy. "I wanted them to have a normal life," she stated firmly and often. "No premieres, no red carpets, just school, friends, and home." Her friends described her home not as a star's mansion, but as a lived-in, loving, and creatively chaotic space filled with stacks of books, her children's artwork, and the beautiful, chaotic mess of genuine family life. Diane often laughed about how genuinely unimpressed her kids were by her career. Her efforts to keep them grounded were both intentional and humorous. She once admitted that she had to bribe her kids with $5 to get them to sit through one of her own films, a testament to how successfully she had built a world where she was just Mom and not a movie star. "They have no interest in what I do," she joked. "They think I'm just this weird mom who wears hats and talks too much." To Diane, this was not a slight, but the ultimate compliment. It meant her plan was working. "That's how it should be," she said. "They don't see me as a movie star. They see me as Mom, and that's all I've ever wanted." Now grown, Diane Keaton's children have taken the foundation she built for them and constructed lives that, while different from each other in their trajectories, both radiate the core values she instilled: independence, authenticity, and a deep understanding that fame is not a substitute for a meaningful life. First, let's meet her daughter, Dexter. Dexter Keaton, born on December 15, 1995, and adopted by Diane the following year, brought a profound sense of gentle purpose to her mother's life. As she grew, Diane often spoke about how her daughter helped her see the world through a softer, more patient lens. "She taught me patience," Diane said. "I had spent my whole life chasing perfection, and then I realized she didn't need a perfect mother. She just needed me to be there." True to her mother's wishes, Dexter grew up shielded from the public eye, developing a strong, independent spirit and a clear sense of self. She pursued an education and career far from the limelight, becoming a certified veterinary technician, a world away from the sound stages and premieres of Hollywood. "She's her own person," Diane once said proudly. "She doesn't need the spotlight, and I think that's wonderful." In 2019, Dexter began dating professional motocross racer Jordan White. Their relationship blossomed away from the media's gaze, and in June 2021, the couple married in an intimate ceremony. In a moment of profound symbolism and joy, Diane, the perennial nonconformist and strong matriarch, had the honor of walking her daughter down the aisle. She called it one of the happiest moments of her life. "It was beautiful," she said. "Seeing her so happy made me feel like I did something right." Dexter and Jordan have embraced a serene, grounded life, reportedly living on a farm, a setting that perfectly suits her love for animals and the private, wholesome existence her mother envisioned. Dexter has occasionally shared her love for her mother on social media, writing in one heartfelt post, "I'm so thankful to have been adopted by such a strong, beautiful, and talented woman. I couldn't thank you enough for everything you've done for me. I love you, Mom." In her choice of a private, grounded life, centered on family, a non-industry career, and a connection to nature, Dexter embodies the very essence of the normalcy Diane fought so hard to provide. If Dexter's path reflects a conscious choice for a life entirely separate from the world of fame, her brother Duke's journey shows how his mother's legacy can also fuel a creative spirit, just on his own terms. Duke Keaton, adopted by Diane in 2001, grew up as the youngest in their tight-knit trio. From an early age, Diane described him as restless, curious, and full of questions. His creative inclinations were apparent early on. She once shared a charming story of taking him to a Los Angeles Lakers game, where he spent most of the time fascinated by the mechanics of a camera, viewing the roaring event through his own unique compositional lens, rather than simply watching the game on the court. This early spark has since ignited into a full-blown creative fire. Today, Duke Keaton is actively carving his own path as an emerging musician and songwriter. While he is the son of a Hollywood legend and grew up surrounded by timeless artistry, his creative instincts are distinctly his own. Moving beyond a private interest, he stepped into the public sphere in December 2023 with the release of his debut single, Run, which showcases his skills as a multi-instrumentalist and his understated musical style. He maintains an active yet carefully curated Instagram presence, offering his growing audience a glimpse into his creative process and evolving artistic universe. This is a fascinating evolution of Diane's own legacy. She shielded him from the pressures of fame, not to stifle his creativity, but to allow it to develop organically, without the distorting pressure and expectations that often come with his last name. He has deliberately taken the quieter road, allowing his work to speak before his name. Despite this step into a public-facing career, he maintains the grounded perspective his mother instilled. As he himself has said, growing up with a famous mom was not a big deal. She's just mom. His path honors his mother not by rejecting the arts, but by embracing them with the same authenticity, independence, and unique vision she always valued. When he appeared alongside his mother and sister at Diane's hand and footprint ceremony at the TCL Chinese Theater in 2022, it wasn't the act of a starry-eyed child of Hollywood, but of a proud, grounded young man supporting his mother. When asked how it felt to have her children there, Diane smiled and simply said, "It means everything." Looking at the lives of Dexter and Duke, we see the clear, intentional blueprint of Diane Keaton's philosophy on parenting. Her approach was as unconventional, instinctive, and fearless as her acting choices. "There's no manual for being a parent," she once said, echoing the sentiment of millions of parents. "You just learn as you go, and you love them through everything." Becoming a mother later in life was, in her view, her greatest advantage. She was already confident, self-aware, and secure in her identity. The vanities and uncertainties of youth had been shed. "I wasn't a young mom," she reflected. "I had already lived a whole other life. So when I finally became one, I could give my kids all of my attention, not my ambition." She built her home around the same principles that defined her own childhood: creativity, structure, and unwavering love, but with a crucial difference. She actively encouraged her children's passions without asking them to be sacrificed. Her mother's story of sacrificed creativity likely echoed in her mind, reinforcing her determination to let Dexter and Duke find their own paths, whether it led to a veterinary clinic, a farm, or a recording studio. Her parenting style was a masterful balance of freedom and guidance. "I think kids need room to make mistakes," she said. "That's how they learn. My job wasn't to control them, it was to guide them." And through it all, she was their fiercest protector, a lioness guarding her cubs from the intrusive glare of the public eye. "Fame is a strange thing," she reflected with the wisdom of someone who had seen its hollow core. "It's not real life. My kids deserve real life." In later years, her pride in the adults they had become was palpable and profound. "They've both become wonderful people," she said, her voice undoubtedly filled with emotion. "They're kind, they're funny, and they're real. I can't take credit for that. I just got lucky." Through all her cinematic achievements, the standing ovations, and the critical praise, Diane Keaton always maintained that motherhood was her greatest and most rewarding role. "Movies fade," she once remarked with poignant clarity, "but family doesn't. My kids are the best thing that ever happened to me." So, what is the final enduring legacy of Diane Keaton? It is, without a doubt, a dual inheritance. There is the public legacy, the Oscar-winning actress, the timeless style icon, the filmmaker who gave us some of the most memorable and authentic female characters in cinema history. But the more profound, more lasting legacy is the private one. Her story was never about following a rule book written by society or Hollywood. It was about the courage to write your own, with conviction and a trusting heart. She never married, defied ageist and sexist expectations, and created a loving, nurturing family on her own timeline and in her own unique way, proving with quiet determination that there is no single prescribed path to a happy and fulfilled life. "I didn't follow the rules," she once said. I just followed my heart. Her children are the living embodiment of that heart. Dexter, with her grounded private family life on a farm, and Duke, with his burgeoning creative career, built thoughtfully on his own terms. Both carry forward the same core values their mother lived by. That independence is priceless, that authenticity is everything, and that family, in whatever form it takes, is the truest measure of success. The image of Diane Keaton that truly endures is not just of Annie Hall on the streets of New York, but of a mother beaming with a pride no award could ever bestow as she walked her daughter down the aisle. It's the image of her, flanked by her grown son and daughter at a career milestone, her smile saying more than any acceptance speech ever could. For all the acclaim and applause, it was the simple, sacred title of Mom that mattered most. Diane Keaton built a legendary career without ever losing sight of what was truly important. She showed the world that the strongest women are often the most authentically themselves, that fierce independence and deep devoted love can not only coexist but flourish together, and that the most lasting legacies are not etched in cement on Hollywood Boulevard, but in the character and hearts of the children you raise. So, whatever happened to Diane Keaton's kids, they grew up, they lived and continue to live the kind of real, grounded, and loving lives their mother always believed in. They are kind, they are real, and they are happy. And in doing so, they became her masterpiece. If you enjoyed this journey into the private world of Diane Keaton and her family, and you'd like to see more stories about the real lives behind Hollywood's biggest legends, please show your support by giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new deep dive. We're always looking for the most fascinating stories behind the fame. Now, we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments below, whose story should we cover next?